So there's this promise in Taoist alchemy of this experience. They call it an alchemical birth. I have experienced that. I experienced Taoist alchemical birth last summer, just about a year ago. I was ill prepared. Nothing in my practice would have prepared me for this as far as my active engagement with alchemy. All of that is within the same framework of neuroaffective somatics that I've been sharing some with you. These emotional alchemy practices are preparation for, we'll call it deeper work. I don't like the concept of advance. You will never gain access to that alchemy from me. It is fully ethical for me to share with you the ethos, the virtue, the thinking, and the logic. Because the virtue, the ethos, the thinking, and the logic is what I was practicing most actively while I was experiencing treatment for stage 3 breast cancer all by myself. How I set up my container for the experience of breast cancer in isolation while watching the world burn was very important because I did not want to be a supremacist or angry or insane. I was thinking, like, if I actually survive this, it would be nice to come out of it maybe a little bit different than when I went in. So one of the things that happens with these practices when we're actively engaging in practicing alchemy in the body, and again, this is all Chinese medicine. I did not make this up. It's almost like the practices become their own container, at least in my experience, regardless of how I'm contemplating my or your body in space. As long as I know gravity. Taoism has this concept called Wu Wei, and it translates into effortless action. And it is impossible to even use words to define it. But thankfully, all the kinky folks and the therapy folks have this idea about having power with a human rather than power over. It's like you become a covalent bond. I understand power as like electricity, just straight up power. So like whatever's going on, like it's just happening. I don't know what it is, okay? But I know that it's happening. I trust because the shit's been here forever and it kept me alive this long. I'm like writing into reality this framework of neuroaffective somatics. And as I was doing that, I knew I was going to start asking you for money. I got a real issue ensuring that I'm as ethical as I can be when I'm taking money from somebody for what I have to offer. That's like the very most important thing to me. Turns out it's also a really great trigger for this experience of Taoist alchemical birth. In my body it did. Okay? Not necessarily in yours, but in mine. And it really became understandable inside the geometry when I got clear that everything we're looking at is a map. Western medicine has us so fucked up about which way is up, down, right, left, closer, farther, because Western medicine only looks at the body as though you are being dissected. Western medicine doesn't look at the body as whole. It looks at the body as damaged. The assumption is that you're broken, walking in. Doesn't matter how kind your practitioner is, how much we're doing our decolonization. If we are in the system of Western medicine, the assumption is there's something wrong. This is not the case when we invoke the Tao as I understand it and teach it. The ochre in this image shows how I understand gravity to be represented in this chart based on my experience of the alchemical birth. Because the alchemical birth started at this nexus here. It felt like bones were being built or like plumbing. And that only happened once I declared my survivorship from my cancer experience. I set up my cancer experience as a double non-dual death process. I separated my head from my belly alchemically, consciously, whatever, ritually. It was all just an idea anyway, but it seemed to make sense. Also, I was targeting my inner 6-year-old with internal family systems and using family constellations to key into lineage. And you're watching my hand do what gravity does here in this chart. This chart, which I had not had an English translation of for years and years, and also would never have been able to show you how gravity operates here had I not had this experience. Reminding you that this is also all very practical, very, very practical. We have these insights apparently after years and decades of study, decades of contemplating humility, compassion, and moderation. Okay, like coming in from virtue. So in essence, all of this was like so contorted and twisted. If you take this like a carousel, when I experienced the dorsal collapse, okay, and the dissociation, it was like twisted. It was twisted. When I aligned the thinking mind to the data model of what I've put together and said, yeah, I'm ready to do it, it was this. So this is a loris. This is the 0 point. This is also the last 2 trigrams of the I Ching. I don't speak I Ching, by the way, but that's what it is. 0, and then here is the beginning, 1 and 2. So that creates what we call the central channel. Once, and this is very likely also, do you see how understanding I am of whatever my understanding of the map is? Like, I just get it. And so whatever the cognitive and the body and the everything, it was just kind of like all set up for this, right? I experienced my pineal gland coming on. This is a rendering of me coming through that experience based on the geometry of the pineal gland. What does that look like? All of which is to say, this promise of alchemical birth, in my experience, for me personally, was dependent upon my actions to decolonize and to take responsibility and to be willing to sit.